When the world looks at New York City on December 31st, they see the center of the universe. They see glamour. They see a new beginning. But if you look through the lens of mystery, you'll realize that Times Square is actually a massive altar of human sacrifice. To understand the ritual of the Big Apple, you have to look at the Waterford crystal ball for what it truly is. It's a 6-ton sphere, cold and heavy, covered in nearly 3,000 razor-sharp crystal triangles. It sits 470 feet above 1 million people like a shimmering, unblinking eye. But this ball wasn't born out of joy. It was born out of fear and prohibition. In 1907, the city was so terrified of the fire and death caused by fireworks that they banned them. The ball was the mechanical replacement, a silent, artificial god designed to keep the masses paralyzed, staring upward into the dark. The tragedy of this ritual is the sacrifice of the body. To earn their place at this altar, 1 million people enter the pens, steel barricades that turn the city into a labyrinth of cages. Once you're in, the trap is set. For 12 hours, these people endure a psychological and physical purgatory. They stand in freezing winds, shoulder to shoulder, unable to eat, unable to sit, and unable to use a bathroom. It is a ritual of endurance where you must suffer to witness the transition of time. But why? What is the meaning behind this confinement? The answer lies in the dust of regret. At midnight, a ton of confetti is released from the skyscrapers. But look closer at the paper falling around you. This isn't just colorful debris. Thousands of those scraps are from the wishing wall, where people write down their deepest shames, their broken hearts, and their desperate pleas for a second chance. When you cheer at midnight, you aren't just celebrating, you're being buried alive under the weight of 1 million strangers' secrets. You're breathing in the pulverized energy of every mistake made in the last year. The moral of New York is the illusion of the clean slate. We believe that if we suffer in the cold, if we stay trapped in the steel cage of Manhattan, and if we watch that crystal eye fall, we can start over. But as the clock strikes 12:01, the lights dim, the police open the cages, and 1 million broken, exhausted souls are pushed back into the dark tunnels of the subway. They realize the terrifying truth. The ball didn't take their problems away. It just counted them down. But the most disturbing part of the Times Square ritual isn't the cold or the cages. It's what happens at 12:05 a.m. when the cameras stop rolling. As the 1 million souls are pushed back into the subways, they leave behind a wasteland of human debris. Over 50 tons of trash are left on the pavement in a single night. But it isn't just plastic bottles and food wrappers. Remember the dust of regret, those thousands of slips of paper, soaked in the melted snow and city grime, are now a thick gray sludge of abandoned dreams. To clean this up, the city sends in an army of over 300 sanitation workers, the Silent Reapers. Armed with giant mechanical brooms and high-pressure hoses, they have one mission: to erase every trace of the night before the sun rises. They wash away the secrets, the confetti, and the physical evidence of 1 million people suffering, effectively resetting the city. It's as if the ritual never happened, leaving the streets sterile and hollow. But if you think the transition of the year is always about cages and crowded streets, you're wrong. To find a celebration that is truly isolated, a place where the tension doesn't come from the crowd, but from the void of the wilderness, we have to leave the concrete canyons of Manhattan. We are traveling 4,000 miles northwest to a place where the sun barely touches the horizon, and the cold doesn't just bite, it freezes your very breath. Welcome to Alaska. Here they don't drop a crystal ball. They don't have steel corrals. In the land of the midnight sun, the ritual is much more explosive and much more dangerous. There's a place in America where, at this exact moment on New Year's Eve, the clock doesn't mark the end of a day, because the day simply doesn't exist. Imagine a world where the sun said goodbye to you back in November and promised to come back only at the end of January. You're in Utqiagvik, Alaska. Around here, New Year's isn't lit up by colorful fireworks. It's wrapped in a darkness so deep you can actually feel the weight of the sky on your shoulders. But it's right in the middle of this absolute blackout where the thermometer hits 35 below zero, cold enough to freeze the fluid in your eyes if you don't blink fast enough, that the most dangerous and bizarre celebration in the U.S. takes place. While the rest of the world is dressing up in silk and glitter, the native Inupiaq gather around something rugged and ancient, the Nalukatak. It's not a stage, and it's definitely not a monument. It's a massive blanket made of several walrus and seal skins, hand-stitched with whale sinew. The smell is intense, earth, sea, and animal fat. This skin is so stiff that when it's cold, it feels like a sheet of metal. But under the heat of the community's hands, it turns into the most powerful catapult you've ever seen. 50 people line up in a circle. They grab the rope to the edges of the skin. There's no electronic countdown here. The rhythm is set by the sound of the leather stretching, thump, thump, thump. A young guy is chosen to climb onto the blanket. He's not wearing a parachute, there are no safety nets, and the gym ceiling looks dangerously close. On the third coordinated pull from the crowd, a brutal physical effort that makes your arm muscles scream, the kid is launched into the air. He shoots up 40 feet. For one eternal second, he hits zero gravity. Up there, he enters a zone of silence where the roar of the crowd below just disappears. He's all alone in the gloom, floating over nothingness. If those 50 people below lose their timing for even a split second, the blanket folds or shifts and the guy hits the concrete floor or the solid ice head on. In Alaska, messing up isn't an option. A mistake is a tragedy. You're probably wondering who would willingly jump and take a risk like that. For a young Inupiaq, the jump is a rite of passage. In a culture that's been steamrolled by modernity, the internet, and fast food, the blanket toss, Nalukatak, is the moment he proves that the blood of whale hunters still runs through his veins. And the reward is the respect of the elders. Being a good jumper means you've got balance, grit, and above all, nerves of steel. In the village's tight hierarchy, the one who jumps high and lands on his feet earns an aura of leadership. It's like he's saying, I can take on the Arctic. It's not just about being thrown, there's a real technique to it. A skilled jumper doesn't just fall. while he's in the air, he has to run in the void. He moves his legs like he's climbing invisible stairs just to keep his balance. The prestige is so big that a jumper who can pull off maneuvers, kick the gym ceiling or spin, and still land perfectly on his feet becomes a local legend. The kids in town will look up to him all year long like he's a real-life superhero. Historically, and even today in a lot of communities, the jump is tied to sharing the whale. When a hunting crew is successful, they throw a festival. While the jumper is way up there, he'll often toss gifts to the crowd, like candy, gloves, or pieces of prepared meat. There's this belief that the higher and more generous the jumper is, the more whales will come to the village next year. It's a way of paying it forward to the community and nature for a lucky hunt. So, would you take the leap? If you think being launched into the sky in Alaska is weird, you gotta see what happens in the humid forests of North Carolina. There's this tiny town called Brasstown that, for decades, kept a secret that drew the fury of activists and the fascination of outsiders, the possum drop. While the world is staring at the crystal ball in Times Square, the locals here are staring at a plexiglass box hanging from the roof of a rustic convenience store. But what's inside that box isn't crystal. It's a live opossum caught in the wild just days before. The scene feels like something out of a southern suspense thriller. The smell of wood smoke in the air, the sound of fiddles in the background, and hundreds of people watching the animal slowly lower as the clock ticks toward midnight. To the locals, the possum isn't a pest. It's an oracle. The tension in the air is thick. The suspense isn't about the party. It's about how the animal's going to react. There's this old Appalachian superstition. The possum's behavior at the turn of the year dictates the harvest and the community's luck. If the animal looks calm, it'll be a year of peace. If it's agitated, the winter will be brutal. It's like a form of medieval divination in the 21st century. You're probably wondering, why a possum? For these mountain folks, the possum is the ultimate symbol of resilience. It survives everything. Catching it and lowering it in a box wasn't seen as cruelty, but as asking nature for permission. The suspense built with every inch the box lowered. If the animal got spooked by the noise, the omen was dark. There were intense legal battles, protests, and threats that almost wiped out the tradition. Today, because of legal pressure, many use a stuffed possum or even a rescue animal that gets pampered after the party, but the spirit of the ritual is still there. It's that moment where modern man desperately tries to reconnect with the wild to find out if the coming year will be kind. In the end, the possum is released back into the woods, carrying with it the fears and hopes of an entire town. But you might ask, how does it work with a stuffed animal? After all, a plush toy doesn't have an expression of fear or happiness. That's the real catch. The conflict between the loss of magic and the strength of tradition. When the law stepped in and forced them to use a toy, the ritual shifted from a living prophecy into a theater of cultural resistance. The folks in Brasstown are stubborn. To keep the suspense alive, they found new ways to read their fate. They look at the descent itself and the mountain weather. if the stuffed animal lowers smoothly and stops perfectly, without swaying in the cold mountain wind, the elders say the year will be stable. If the mountain wind shakes the glass box and makes the plush possum tip over, they read it as a warning of turbulent times. Often, just so they don't lose that living connection, they use Barney, their official stuffed possum. So tell me, would you trust your fate to the eyes of a wild animal or to a teddy bear? Now, close your eyes and picture this. And you're in the heart of the American Northwest in Boise, Idaho. The air is dry, freezing, and the silence of the night is broken only by the sound of an industrial crane moving heavily against the dark sky. While the rest of the world waits for a polished, shiny crystal ball, thousands of people here are looking up with an almost religious expectation for something much more rugged. Hanging from steel cables, swaying slightly in the winter wind, is a gigantic potato. But don't get it twisted, this isn't some delicate sculpture. It's an 800-pound monster lit from within with LED lights that make it glow like something that just fell out of space. The Glow-tato. You gotta be wondering what would drive an entire city to gather in the freezing cold just to watch a giant tuber drop from the sky? For the people of Idaho, the potato isn't just a side dish at dinner. It's the lifeblood of the local economy. It's the story of generations of families who survived on this harsh, dry land. Watching that glowing potato slowly lower is a ritual of gratitude and at the same time a test of nerves. The suspense is real. That crane has to operate with pinpoint precision so that 800 pounds of fiberglass and metal don't give way under the wind's pressure. If something fails, if the cable creaks or the lights flicker, the party mood is replaced by a heavy, tense silence. For the locals, a perfect drop means the next harvest will be plenty. It's modern technology serving a nearly ancient agrarian belief. At midnight, when that massive structure finally hits the base and the fireworks go off, the relief is everywhere. It's not just the start of a new year. It's the confirmation that the identity of these people remains intact, suspended between the tradition of the soil and the ambition of the future. So tell me, would you have the guts to stand right under a half-ton potato just to guarantee your luck for next year? Forget about plastic or fiberglass replicas. If you want to understand the true weight of reality, you've got to head to Lebanon, Pennsylvania. What's hanging from that industrial crane isn't some shiny ornament. It's real. It's dense. And it reeks of pure beef smoked over heavy hickory wood. To understand what happens here, you first have to understand the smell of the town. The air is thick, loaded with the scent of burning wood and spices from Seltzer's Smokehouse Meats, a place that still uses massive century-old brick ovens where the smoke never stops rising. In the center of this industrial town, a massive crane dominates the night skyline. Hanging by steel chains that creak under the tension is a 200-pound cylinder of solid meat, the famous Lebanon bologna. This isn't just a snack, it's a monument to engineering and survival. To reach that level of density, the meat goes through a slow fermentation curing process, a technique brought over by German settlers known as the Pennsylvania Dutch. They discovered that by controlling temperature and smoke with pinpoint accuracy, they could create a food that would last through the most brutal winters. The block you see swaying in the sky was pressed with tons of force and smoked for days until it became as solid as a wooden beam. The suspense in the square is almost palpable. Hundreds of factory workers whose families have worked in those very same smokehouses for 4 or 5 generations watch the crane with almost religious respect. The silence is broken only by the metallic hum of the motor and the cold wind that makes the 200-pound cylinder sway dangerously. There's a real technical fear here. The center of gravity for a handcrafted piece of meat isn't perfect like a metal sphere. If the wind blows too hard and the block starts to spin, the tension on the chains could cause a disaster over the crowd. The descent is slow, calculated, so that the last inch touches the base exactly on the clock's final beat. The town elders watch the shadows cast by the meat against the red brick buildings. For them, the precision of this drop is an omen. If the bologna lowers without wobbling and hits the ground firmly, they believe the production in the factories will remain steady and the town's livelihood is guaranteed for another year. It's the union of an ancient agrarian faith and a raw industrial reality. The final moment is the most symbolic. After impact, the meat isn't treated like a trophy. It's taken back to the factory, professionally sliced, and distributed to local shelters. In Lebanon, the year doesn't start with empty promises, but with the physical distribution of food. It's a brutal reminder that in this part of the world, survival depends on manual labor, smoke, and what you can produce with your own hands. You might be asking yourself, where does all that meat actually come from? The answer is buried in the very history of the Pennsylvania Dutch. Centuries ago, these German settlers arrived in a land that was beautiful but unforgiving. They didn't have the luxury of waste. When winter approached, they had to decide which cattle wouldn't survive the frost, and every single ounce of that animal had to be preserved. The meat for the giant bologna comes from the massive cattle farms that sprawl across the rolling hills of Lebanon County. It's not prime cut steak. It's something much more traditional. They use lean beef trimmings, the parts of the animal that are high in protein but tough to cook, and they transform them through a process that feels more like alchemy than cooking. They grind the beef, mix it with a secret blend of salt, sugar, and heavy spices, and then let the natural lactic acid do the work. It's a controlled fermentation that cooks the meat without ever touching a flame. This massive 200-pound cylinder is a concentration of dozens of different cattle gathered from the local valley and pressed together into a single dark, dense mass. It represents the entire herd of the community, unified in one block. When you see it hanging there, you're looking at the biological output of the local land, processed through century-old wooden smokehouses that have absorbed the grease and the stories of 1,000 harvests. It's the ultimate survival food. In the old days, a farmer could hang a roll of this bologna in his cellar, and it would stay good for months, providing life-saving protein when the snow was 10 feet deep outside. That's why when the crane lowers that meat today, it's not just a stunt. It's a tribute to the animals and the land that keep the town alive. It's a reminder that in Lebanon, nothing is wasted and everything is earned. You've probably noticed a pattern by now. The cold has always been the greatest challenge for the American people. In this country, winter isn't just a season, It's an adversary that shaped the national character. From the very first settlers who landed on these shores to the pioneers pushing west, the frost was the ultimate judge. It was the cold that decided who was prepared and who was reckless. It's why so many American traditions, like launching a kid into the Alaskan sky or lowering a massive block of meat in Pennsylvania, revolve around the dead of winter. It's a way of looking the freezing dark in the eye and saying, we're still here. This obsession with survival in the cold is baked into the culture. Think about it. The Inupiaq in Alaska developed the Nalukatak because in a place where your breath turns to ice instantly, you need absolute community trust to stay alive. The Pennsylvania Dutch perfected their smoked meats because without that salt and smoke, the winter would have been a death sentence. Even the giant potato in Idaho is a celebration of a crop that hides underground, safe from the frost, waiting to feed a nation. In the U.S., the cold is seen as a forge. There's this idea that hard winters make hard people. When the thermometer drops to 30 below, the typical American mindset isn't just to hide. It's to build, to preserve, and to celebrate. These bizarre New Year's rituals are actually victory laps. They are proof that despite the blizzards, the frozen engines, and the months of darkness, the community didn't break. The cold is the enemy that forced Americans to become engineers of survival, turning frozen meat and walrus skins into symbols of defiance. So when you see these people standing in the snow at midnight, they aren't just waiting for a clock to strike 12. They are honoring a legacy of endurance. They are celebrating the fact that once again they stared down the north wind and won. After seeing all this, you've got to be asking yourself, if life is so brutal in the frozen corners of America, why not just pack up and move to the warmer states? Why stay where the air hurts your face when you could be under a palm tree? Well, that's the great American crossroads. While the North is a battle against the ice, the South is a battle against the unseen predator. In states like Florida, Arizona, or Texas, the heat isn't a vacation. It's an invisible wall. In the North, the cold forces you to huddle together. It builds community through shared hardship, but in the extreme heat, the sun forces you into isolation. You live behind thick glass and humming air conditioners. If the power grid fails in a Texas summer or a Phoenix July, your home doesn't just get uncomfortable, it becomes a literal oven. It's a war where the enemy isn't the snow at your door, but an environment that tries to dehydrate you and rot everything you build. Because they don't have to prove they survived the frost, the rituals in the South aren't heavy or somber. They don't need oracles to predict the harvest. Instead, the American spirit here turns into defiance through chaos. They throw parties to celebrate the fact that the sun couldn't burn them out. And nowhere is this more evident than in Key West, Florida. Imagine the scene. It's midnight on New Year's Eve. The humidity is so thick you can practically taste the salt on your tongue, and the air smells like a mix of tropical flowers and ocean brine. While the rest of the country is shivering in heavy wool coats, thousands of people are gathered here in shorts and flip-flops packed into Duval Street. But they aren't looking for a block of meat or a sign from nature. Descending from the roof of the historic Bourbon Street pub, glowing under intense neon lights, is a massive 6-foot-tall red high-heeled shoe. And sitting inside that glittery fiberglass pump, waving a fan and smiling at the madness below, is Sushi, the island's most legendary drag queen. This is the drag queen drop. And for the people of Key West, it's the ultimate middle finger to the hardships of the year. This shoe isn't just a prop, it's a masterpiece of local engineering. It's custom built from reinforced fiberglass and covered in thousands of hand-applied sequins that catch every flicker of the street lights. It has to be incredibly strong because it's carrying a human being, suspended by cables over a sea of thousands of tourists and locals. There's a distinct tension as the shoe begins its slow descent. You're watching a person floating in a giant piece of art, held up by nothing but a few steel wires and the skill of a crane operator. The legend of Sushi and the shoe started over 25 years ago. Back then, Key West was a refuge for those who didn't fit in anywhere else, a place at the very end of the road where the sun bleaches away your past. They wanted a ritual that matched their spirit, something loud, flamboyant, and completely original. Sushi herself used to spend weeks preparing her gown, knowing that once she reached the ground, she'd be swarmed by a crowd celebrating freedom and the fact that they're still alive in paradise. When the shoe finally lands on the street at the stroke of midnight, the explosion of joy is different from their relief in the north. It's not their relief of having survived the cold, it's the joy of having thrived in the heat. They pop champagne, the music hits a fever pitch, and for a moment the heat of the night and the heat of the crowd become one. It's the triumph of identity over everything else. To understand why they drop a giant shoe here, you have to understand where the city actually is. Key West isn't just another beach town, it's the southernmost point of the continental United States. It's located at the very end of Overseas Highway, a long, thin strip of asphalt that leaps over the ocean for over 100 miles. When you're in Key West, you're closer to Havana, Cuba than you are to Miami. You are literally at the end of the road. For over a century, this island has been a sanctuary for wreckers, pirates, writers like Hemingway, and people who simply didn't want to be found. It's a place where the rules of the mainland don't seem to apply. The heat and the salt air have a way of dissolving your past. Because the island is so small, just 4 miles long and 2 miles wide, everything is amplified. The colors are brighter, the characters are louder, and the traditions, well, they're weirder. The drag queen drop happens right on Duval Street, the main artery of the island. It's a narrow street lined with Victorian mansions and open-air bars that never seem to close. But there's a strange irony in this celebration. While the rest of Florida is expanding with massive skyscrapers and highways, Key West feels trapped in time, surrounded by a turquoise ocean that is both its protector and its greatest threat. The locals call themselves conchs, and they see their island as an independent republic. To them, New Year's isn't just a date on the calendar, it's a celebration of their isolation. They are a community of survivors who chose the sun over the snow, and the giant red shoe is their lighthouse. It's the signal that even at the end of the world, the party is just getting started. We're moving away from the tropical humidity of Key West and crossing the country toward the dry, merciless heat of the desert. The connection here is the object. We're moving from a sophisticated high heel to a rugged leather boot, built to stomp on land where nothing grows without a fight. Welcome to Prescott, Arizona. Here, the neon lights of the coast are replaced by the golden glow of a desert moon, and the salt in the air turns into fine red dust. In Arizona, the heat is a different kind of monster. It doesn't drown you, it bakes you. It's a silent, heavy heat that cracks the earth and tests the spirit of anyone brave enough to call the high desert home. To survive in this landscape of canyons and rattlesnakes, you need more than just resilience. You need the right gear. And that's why, in the center of the historic Whiskey Row, thousands of people gather to watch the descent of a 6-foot-tall illuminated cowboy boot. Imagine the tension as midnight approaches. This isn't a delicate piece of art. It's a massive structure of metal and fiberglass, glowing with festive LEDs, hanging from a heavy-duty industrial crane. It represents the true West, a place where the cowboy isn't a movie character, but a symbol of the grit it takes to build a life out of dust and determination. As the boot begins its slow mechanical descent, the crowd goes silent, their eyes fixed on the silver spurs that glint under the spotlights. The boot drop is a ritual of pride. For these people, the boot is a survival tool. It's what protects you from the scorching sand and the rugged terrain. Watching it lower through the desert night is a way of honoring the pioneers who built this town out of nothing. There's a raw, metallic sound as the crane operates, a reminder that in the desert, everything is industrial, everything is heavy, and nothing comes easy. When that giant boot finally hits the stage at the stroke of midnight, the roar of the crowd is a defiant shout against the desert itself. They made it through another year of dust storms and record-breaking temperatures. In Arizona, they don't just celebrate the passage of time, they celebrate the fact that they haven't been swallowed by the sand. You might be wondering, what happens to a 6-foot-tall, glowing boot once the party is over? Unlike the meat in Pennsylvania, you can't eat it. And unlike the animals in the north, you can't release it back into the wild. After the spotlights fade and the desert wind sweeps the empty streets of Whiskey Row, the boot is carefully dismantled and moved to a high-security storage facility. But it doesn't just sit there gathering dust. In Prescott, the boot is treated like a piece of the city's soul. During the year, it undergoes meticulous maintenance. Every single LED is checked. The fiberglass is polished to withstand the desert's abrasive sand, and the metal spurs are sharpened to keep their silver glint. It is a cycle of constant preparation. The locals don't see it as just storing a prop. They see it as keeping the spirit of the West alive until the next battle against the heat begins. But there's a deeper detail. The boot is more than a decoration. It's a time capsule. Every year before the boot is sealed for the next drop, small records of the town's history from the previous year are often kept. Notes on the harvest, the weather, and the community's struggles. When the boot rises again, it carries the weight of everything they've survived. It is a silent witness to the passage of time in the desert. Leaving the dry heat of Arizona behind, we head northeast to the flat, endless plains of Vincennes, Indiana. Here the connection to the ritual changes. We move from the preservation of the cowboy boot to a ritual of absolute destruction. In this part of the country, the land is everything. The soil is dark, rich, and it demands a sacrifice to guarantee the next season. While other towns lower objects with care, the people of Vincennes gather in the freezing night for the watermelon drop. But don't let the name fool you. This isn't a plastic replica. High above the crowd, a massive 18-foot tall wooden watermelon, the Watermelon Man, holds a secret inside its hollow belly. Inside that structure are real watermelons grown in the very soil of this county, the watermelon capital of the world. Imagine the tension as the clock ticks toward midnight. The wooden structure begins its descent, but the suspense isn't about the landing. It's about the impact. At the exact stroke of midnight, the bottom of the giant wooden fruit opens up, and 15 real, heavy watermelons are released from an altitude of several stories. They don't lower, they fall. The sound is unmistakable, a wet, heavy thud as the fruit shatters against a specialized hard platform on the ground. To an outsider, it looks like a mess, but to the farmer standing in the cold, that explosion of red pulp and seeds is a biological prophecy. There is an old belief that the way the watermelons shatter, the distance the seeds fly, and the pattern of the juice foretells the quality of the next summer's harvest. It is a messy, violent, and honest ritual. It's the sound of the earth's fruit meeting the hard reality of the winter. In Indiana, they don't just watch the passage of time, they crush it. They celebrate the end of the year by returning the fruit to the earth in a burst of red, proving that even in the dead of winter, the heart of the harvest is still beating. You might look at this and ask, is it cold there? And isn't this just a massive waste of food? To answer the first part, yes, it is brutally cold. Vincennes sits in the Wabash River Valley, where the humidity from the water turns the winter air into a damp, bone-chilling frost. When those watermelons hit the platform at midnight, the temperature is often well below freezing. The fruit isn't just soft. It's often partially crystallized by the ice, making the explosion even more dramatic, shattering like red glass. But the question of waste is where the real story lies. In a world where we are taught never to throw food away, why would a farming community destroy their most precious crop? The truth is, the farmers don't see it as waste. They see it as a tithe to the earth. These are the late season melons, the ones that weren't perfect enough for the supermarket shelves, but are heavy with seeds and juice. By crushing them into the ground, they are symbolically returning the nutrients and the life force of the previous year back to the soil. It's a biological sacrifice. They believe that to get something from the land, you have to give something back, and the red splatter on the pavement isn't a mess. To them, it's a promise. It's a way of feeding the memory of the earth so it remembers to be fertile when the sun returns. So, while it looks like a waste of a meal, for the people of Vincennes, it's the price of a future. They aren't throwing away food. They are planting the energy of the new year in the most violent and visible way possible. If you think Indiana was cold, you aren't ready for Eastport, Maine. This is the easternmost city in the United States, a place where the sun hits the country first, but the wind feels like it's carving your skin. Here, the connection to the ritual isn't about the dirt or the desert. It's about the abyss. The people of Maine live by the tide. and their survival depends on the freezing gray depths of the Atlantic. In the center of town, as the temperature drops far below zero and the harbor water begins to slush with ice, a massive 8-foot-long sardine made of steel and colored lights hangs high above the crowd. It's known as the Great Sardine. But Maine doesn't just celebrate one thing, because they are caught between two worlds, the land and the sea. They actually have a double ritual. They drop the sardine to honor the history of the canning factories that built this town, and then they drop a giant red lobster to celebrate the kings of the modern local economy. The atmosphere is heavy with the smell of salt and diesel. There are no neon parties like in Florida here. This is a somber, rugged celebration. When the clock ticks toward midnight, the Great Sardine begins its descent. The tension is in the wind. If the gusts are too strong, the metal fish can swing like a weapon. But there's a strange, beautiful local tradition. As the sardine lowers, people in the crowd rush forward to kiss the fish. It sounds crazy, but in Maine, kissing the cold metal of the Great Sardine is a pledge of loyalty to the sea. It's a way of asking the ocean for mercy in the coming year. It's a prayer for calm waters, full nets, and for the sons and daughters who worked on the boats to come home safe. When the lobster follows, it's a reminder of the wealth that the freezing water provides, even if it tries to take everything else away. While the kissing of the Great Sardine is a silent, respectful gesture to the past, the moment the giant lobster begins its descent, the energy shifts completely. If the sardine is the soul of the town, the lobster is the muscle. In Maine, lobstering isn't just a job, it's a high-stakes gamble against the ocean. When that massive, glowing red crustacean starts lowering from the heights of the Tides Institute building, the crowd doesn't go silent, they erupt. The descent of the lobster is the signal for the great noise. As it lowers, the harbor comes alive. Captains on the fishing boats dock nearby blast their foghorns, their deep, vibrating roars echoing against the brick buildings of the waterfront. People break out bells, whistles, and even pots and pans. It's a chaotic, industrial symphony. They aren't just making noise, they are trying to wake up the ocean. There's no kissing the lobster. Instead, there's a collective reaching out. As it reaches the bottom, the tradition is for the town's lobster queen or a respected local fisherman to be the first to touch its claws. It's a superstitious move. Touching the giant lobster's claw at midnight is believed to bring heavy traps for the rest of the year. If you touch it, your luck changes. If you don't, you're just another person fighting the waves. It's a brutal contrast. You have the freezing salt spray hitting your face, the smell of diesel from the boats, and the deafening sound of foghorns cutting through the blizzard. When the lobster finally lands, the crowd doesn't go home to sleep. They head to the local pubs to drink darkened stormies and tell stories of the ones the sea took and the ones that got away. In Eastport, New Year's isn't a celebration of newness. It's a celebration of endurance. They aren't just happy it's a new year. They're proud they survived the last one on the edge of the world. They stand on the docks facing the dark ocean, kissing a giant steel fish in the middle of a blizzard, proving that no matter how hard the Atlantic hits them, they aren't going anywhere. Before we move on, we have to pause in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. You've seen the meat in Lebanon, but just 75 miles away, the vibe shifts from the butcher shop to the candy factory. To understand why this city drops a 400-pound yellow chick, you have to understand the ghosts that live here. Bethlehem was once the heart of American industrial power. The steel produced here built the sky over Manhattan, and the guns that won World War II. For over a century, the skyline was dominated by 5 massive 20-story blast furnaces. But in 1995, the fires went out. The city was left with thousands of tons of rusting iron and a giant hole in its identity. However, while the steel was dying, another local giant was quietly thriving: the just-born candy company. This factory produces over 2 billion Peeps every single year. To put that in perspective, they make enough Peeps in 1 year to circle the entire Earth twice. So, when it came time to celebrate the new year, the city decided to embrace its softer side. The giant Peep is a marvel of engineering. It's a 4-foot 9-inch tall structure made of heavy-duty fiberglass, reinforced with a steel skeleton. It takes a specialized crane to hoist it into position, but the real magic is inside. It's packed with over 1,500 LED lights that can change color, though it always glows that signature radioactive neon yellow as it starts its descent. The ritual is part of a 2-day festival called Peeps Fest. Thousands of families gather at Steel Stacks, an arts campus literally built at the feet of the rusted furnaces. There's a haunting beauty to the scene. The dark, jagged steel giants loom in the background like ancient monsters, while this bright, absurdly cute yellow bird descends in front of them. The moral here is a lesson in economic evolution. The people of Bethlehem say that steel built the town, but Peeps saved it. The candy factory became the town's largest employer after the collapse. As the Peep lowers, the air often fills with a scent they call the Bethlehem breeze, a mixture of the cold river air and the smell of toasted marshmallow and vanilla wafting from the nearby plant. When that giant chick finally lands at the stroke of midnight, it's not just a joke. It's a defiant statement. It proves that a city can lose its hard industry and still keep its soul. It's the triumph of the marshmallow over the furnace. It's the city's way of saying that even in a place forged in fire and coal, the future can still be sweet. To understand why California drops a giant bunch of grapes, you have to look past the luxury resorts and see the scars on the land. We are in Temecula Valley, a place that shouldn't exist. This region is a beautiful lie built on the edge of a wasteland. Just decades ago, this was a graveyard of dust and bones. The heat here doesn't just tan you, it kills. It's an aggressive, punishing sun that turns everything to ash. The only reason these vineyards aren't a desert right now is a fragile geological fluke called the Rainbow Gap, a single tear in the mountains that allows the ocean to breathe life into this furnace. If that wind ever stops, the valley dies in a week. The giant grape drop isn't just a party, it's a desperate ritual of survival. The object itself is a massive 12-foot tall cluster of glowing spheres, suspended high above the crowd like a heavy purple heart. But there is a deep tension in the air. This valley lives under the constant shadow of 2 terrifying threats: drought and fire. Every year, as the giant grape begins its descent, the people below aren't just cheering. They are looking at the horizon with fear. They know that in this part of California, the hills are made of tinder. A single spark, a single heat wave, and the purple gold turns into a wall of flame that can swallow entire neighborhoods in minutes. The giant grape is a monument to what they have to lose. It's a reminder that their entire wealth, their homes, and their legacy are at the mercy of a climate that is becoming increasingly hostile. But the real mystery lies in the double drop. Why do they celebrate twice? Some say it's for convenience, but the locals know the truth. The 9 p.m. drop is a sacrifice to the gods of the East, a way to stay connected to the world they left behind. But the midnight drop, that's for the valley. It's a moment of collective breath holding. As the massive structure lowers through the darkness, the silence is heavy. They are praying that the water keeps flowing. They are praying that the fire stays in the mountains. When the grapes finally hit the bottom, the eruption of joy is almost violent. It's the sound of thousands of people who just realize they escaped another year of catastrophe. In Temecula, the wine doesn't taste like luxury. It tastes like defiance. They are drinking the blood of a desert that tried to kill them, celebrating a life that could vanish with the next sunset. So, after hearing about the most bizarre, colorful, and strange celebrations across the vast expanse of America, which one would you actually risk attending? If you're still undecided, if you're still looking for that spark of excitement, I have one last story for you. But I must warn you, think carefully before you decide to listen. Because up until now, we've talked about traditions, community, and the quirky ways people say goodbye to the calendar. But in this place at the very edge of the world, it isn't about happiness. It's about what we leave behind in the dark. It's about the things that follow us when the lights go out. Welcome to Dauphin Island, Alabama. To truly understand the horror and the beauty of this ritual, you first have to understand the true nature of a Christmas tree and think about yours. For an entire month, that tree sits in the dead center of your home. It isn't just a piece of wood with lights. It is a silent, organic witness. It has sat there in the shadows of your living room, absorbing the vibrations of your most private life. It has heard the whispered arguments late at night. It has felt the hidden grief you didn't show anyone else. It has soaked up the silent, crushing weight of your unfulfilled promises and the energy of every ghost, living or dead, that walked through your door this December. In the deep, humid air of Alabama, they don't see these trees as seasonal trash. They see them as vessels. They see them as sponges that have spent 30 days drinking your soul. They call it the burning of the trees. But the old-timers, the ones who remember the stories whispered before the sirens of the modern world took over, they know it by a darker name, the exorcism of the dead year. As the sun begins to set on December 31st, the atmosphere on Dauphin Island changes. The air grows thick and cold, carrying the scent of salt and ancient rot from the Gulf. From every corner of the coast, hundreds of families begin a pilgrimage. They are carrying gifts. They are dragging corpses. They bring their trees, now brittle, brown, and dying, to a desolate, windswept stretch of the beach. And they don't just throw them in a pile. They carefully, almost obsessively, construct a massive, jagged pyramid. It is a skeletal tower of dead needles and dry wood that can reach over 30 feet into the black sky. It stands there on the edge of the Gulf of Mexico, a monument made of every failure, every heartbreak, and every secret of an entire community waiting for the clock to strike 12. It is a giant wooden heart, and it is full of poison. But why? Why this obsession with fire? In the Deep South, there is a lingering, heavy belief that the ghost of the old year is a parasitic entity. It is a shadow that doesn't want to leave if you don't destroy its physical anchor, the tree that lived with you and breathed your air. It attaches itself to your future. It becomes a hitchhiker in your soul, bringing back the same tragedies, the same debts, and the same sickness into your new year. The trees are the body of that ghost. To let the tree survive past midnight is to let the ghost live. The tension on the beach as midnight nears is thick enough to choke you. Well, there is no pop music here. There are no neon countdown clocks or digital screens. There's only the rhythmic, predatory sound of the black tide hitting the sand and the wind whistling through millions of dry, dead pine needles. Thousands of people stand in a massive silent circle. You can't see their eyes, only the moonlight reflecting off the water. They are silent because they aren't there to party. They are there to witness a execution. At the stroke of midnight, a single torch is thrown into the base. Because these trees are packed with dried resin and sap, the structure doesn't just catch fire, it detonates. It is a violent screaming eruption of orange and red that cuts through the night like a serrated blade. The heat is so punishing, so supernatural in its intensity, that it forces the crowd to run backward in a panic, shielding their faces from the roar. The sound is deafening, a low-frequency vibration that feels like 1,000 voices screaming at once. For those 10 minutes, the beach isn't a beach anymore. It's a portal. You see the white-hot skeletons of the trees standing for a split second before they vanish into nothingness. The mystery, however, is in the smoke. The locals don't look at the fire. They watch the smoke with a terrifying obsession. Which way is the smoke from your life floating? If the wind drives the smoke out into the abyss of the sea, the year will be clear. The sins are gone. But if the wind shifts, if that thick black smoke blows back toward the houses, it means the ghost is refusing to leave. It means the past is fighting its way back into your bedroom. But here's the thought that will haunt you tonight. What if you didn't burn your tree? Think about your own home. Most of you will wait until the first or second week of January. You'll take the ornaments off and you'll drag that tree to the sidewalk. You'll toss it in a dumpster or leave it for the garbage truck like in common trash. In Dauphin Island, that is a spiritual death sentence. By not incinerating those needles, you are keeping the energy stagnant. You are literally hoarding your failures. If your last year was bad, if you felt stuck, if you felt unlucky, if you felt like a shadow was following you, ask yourself, how did you discard your tree last year? If you didn't turn it to ash, you didn't renew anything. You just moved the rot to a different location. You invited the ghost to stay. Keeping that tree or discarding it like garbage is like leaving a deep wound to fester. The luck won't flow, the energy won't renew. You'll be walking into the future, but you'll be dragging the rotting, heavy corpse of your past behind you. Every bad memory, every mistake, and every tear is still there, trapped in those needles, waiting in the dark. So as you prepare for the midnight bells, look at those branches. Do not treat them lightly. Do not think it's just a decoration. It is a cage. And if you aren't brave enough to strike the match, If you aren't brave enough to sacrifice the past to the flames, then don't be surprised when the new year feels exactly like the old one. Because the ghost is still in your house. It's under your bed. And it's much, much hungrier than it was before.